What's up, Node.js developers? Welcome back to a new live build, and today we have an exciting project. Today we're gonna build the backend application for the Nike app. We're gonna build a REST API using Node.js, Express, MongoDB, and we're gonna query everything with Redux Toolkit from the front-end side in our React Native application. So it's a build full of new technologies, and I'm super excited about this, and I hope you'll learn a lot today. This is a great tutorial for not specifically Nike application, but any e-commerce application that you might be building. So if you have a project on the side or you have some ideas, take this as an inspiration, follow along and learn how to structure everything and how to put everything together in order to have a fully working end-to-end application. So what exactly we're gonna do today? We're gonna start by building the REST API. And we're going to do that using Node.js and Express. For the database layer, we're going to use MongoDB, which is a NoSQL database, very popular out there. And with these tools and technologies, we're going to build all the CRUD operation, like create, read, update for our models. And the models will be orders, will be products, so that the user can query all the products, can add them to the cart, and in the end can create orders and then track the orders in the application. So after that, in the second part of the tutorial, also in this video, we're gonna query all of this data from our React Native application, and we're gonna do using the Redux Toolkit Query. Yeah, that is the plan. I hope you're as excited as I am. And if you're new here, hi, my name is Vadim. I'm a full stack developer. I've been working at multiple companies, including Amazon. I've been co-founding startups, but now my passion is helping you build end-to-end impactful applications. So if you enjoy what I'm doing here, make sure to subscribe to the channel and grab a cup of coffee, because we are up for a great build today. Before we get started, make sure to download the asset bundle at assets.notjust.dev/Nike, because that will include some dummy data and some pre-made components that I have prepared for you in order to speed up the process of following along. And if you already downloaded it before, then try to do it again, because I included some updated files specifically for today's tutorial. As well, I have prepared for you a step-by-step guide with code snippets in order to make sure that everyone can follow along and you can compare the code with the guide. So to access it, make sure to go check in the description of the YouTube video below. I included the link to that step-by-step guide. Let me actually find, because I will also need it. Just give me 1 second. Here it should be. Is it like this? Come on. Yeah, if you go here under the follow the step-by-step guide under this video, you're gonna be redirected to our notjust.dev website, where I have all the actual steps that you have to do in order to follow this tutorial. Don't worry, we're gonna take it step by step. I'm gonna do everything together in this live stream, so there is not gonna be a lot of copy pasting without me explaining what we actually do. Because I'm trying to make sure that everyone actually understands what we are doing rather than basically copy pasting, because that's how you learn and can apply the same knowledge to your own projects. So before we jump into the building project, I want to say hello everyone in the live chat. How are you doing, guys? I see a lot of people today are joining us. A lot of you have been asking for a Node.js backend, and here we have it. You ask, we provide. Is it from a single stream? Wait a second, let me see. Hi guys, hello Place, hello Gurveer. How are you doing, guys? Ignace, Rocky, David. I want to remind everyone that if you're watching this live, you still have opportunity to join our giveaway that we are organizing. We're organizing this giveaway because I lost a bet in one of my previous live stream where I didn't manage to build an application in 1 hour using Flutter. What a shame. So yeah, I promised there to do a giveaway. Actually, I promised there to do a giveaway for 50% discount for my premium course. But we fought with a team and decided to do a full like free entry for one person for the premium course. So you can enter it by going to ss.notjust.dev/giveaway. And you have opportunity to win one place inside our premium course that you can find at academy.notjust.dev. And actually, previous week we have launched a new module inside our course all about notification, including in-app notification, push notifications with Firebase, cloud messaging. So yeah, the course is getting bigger, our community is getting bigger, a lot of people enjoy it and are taking actual value out of it. With that being said, yeah, join the giveaway. You might be the one who will win it. We're gonna announce the winners at the beginning of the next week, so you still have a bit of time. Perfect. I think we are done with the presentation, and I think we should get started because we have a lot of things to learn and to build today. Let's go ahead and open the step-by-step guide. I'm gonna do that as well, and we're gonna start following along the steps that we have prepared there. So let's scroll a bit until we start with Node.js server. So for that, what we have to do is to simply create an empty directory. So for that, I'm gonna, I can do it here, but let me just simply open the directory with my project to better. Okay, it should be here. Nike. So yes, let's start by creating a directory for our backend application. Let's create a folder, and that's going to be Nike app backend. Now we can go ahead and open this application in Visual Studio Code. Let me open it like this. Nike application backend. Here we have it. And initially, we do not have anything there because it's an empty directory. So what we have to do is, let's go ahead and initialize an npm package that will be the base of our Node.js backend. So for that, let's go ahead and do npm init and then /y to accept all the defaults. And what that does is it created the package.json inside our project. And now we can add dependencies, we can run this project, and so on. Speaking about the dependencies, let's go ahead and install the first dependencies that we will need. I'm going to start by installing a dev dependency, which is called nodemon. And this dependency will help us run the server. And not simply run it, but watch our files, and every time we do some changes, it will restart automatically the server. So we basically have some kind of a hot refresh that we get in React Native. That is very useful because we will do a lot of changes and we don't want to stop and restart the server manually. That's going to happen automatically by nodemon. And once we've done that, I think we can already add a script inside our package.json that will run our project, and the script is going to be called dev. So every time we run npm run dev, what we want to do is, using the nodemon, we want to execute the entry point, like we execute the file that is going to be the main file of our application. So let's do index.js, but we do not have this index.js yet. So we're gonna get there, we're gonna install it, because for the index.js we need another dependency. And here I'm talking about the Express package. And let's go ahead and install npm i express. And Express is gonna allow us to easier handle and build our REST API inside the Node.js. Basically, we can do everything without Express, but that's gonna require a lot more code to write. So Express simplifies creating, managing, and running the server. So now that we have Express installed, we can go ahead and create our index file that is going to be the entry point of our backend application. For that, I'd like to structure all my source code in a folder called src. So let's go ahead and create that. And inside it, let's create the index.js. Okay, perfect. So here in the index.js, we're gonna need to import Express using require. Let me actually probably zoom it more. So yeah, require Express. Now, using Express, we can initialize our application. So let's do const up equal Express. That's going to be the instance of our application. And in order to run this application, what we have to do is we need to call up.listen. We need to provide here a port on what port to listen. So for example, 3000. And then we can provide a callback function that is going to be executed when the application has run. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to simply console log something. So we see in the logs that, yeah, the application is indeed listening to incoming requests. So API is listening on port. And what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to extract this port into a variable because this port is usually coming from an environment variable in order to be able to adjust it on the go on different environments. Basically in production, you can have a different port. In development, you can define a different port. So let's listen to this port that we define on top. And lastly here, the port like this. Okay, perfect. This is a very minimal API that will not do anything, but let's go ahead and try to actually run it. So we're going to execute the npm run dev, because if you remember, we have added the script here in the package.json, the dev, that will execute node mode on the source index.js. So if I do that, we should execute node mode, as we can see here, source index.js, and we see that our API is listening on port 3000. Okay, that's good, but at the moment nothing will happen. So what we have to do is we have to specify some endpoints and what should happen when we access those endpoints. So for that demo purposes, like everything starts with a hello world. Let's go ahead and display the hello world whenever we access the main endpoint there. So for that, we're gonna use the up dot, and here we need to specify the method that we want to implement. So we're gonna implement the get method, which is going to I'm going to explain a bit more, a bit later, what is the difference between get and post. But basically, here what we have to do is to specify the endpoint. So we're going to implement the request for the root endpoint. And what should happen here in the callback function, we get the request and the response. And using the response, we can basically send some HTML back to as the response. So if I do h2 hello world and close the h2 here, we do not need to restart it because NodeMon will automatically restart due to changes. And what we can do now is go ahead and access our localhost at port 3000 and see if everything is working as expected. Come on, where is my window here? Yeah. So let's go ahead and access localhost 3000. And what we should see is the hello world here, because that's what we return as the response. All right, so that's the first step. We have a basically running Node.js backend. Very minimalistic, but we have it ready to implement our CRUD operations for the next part. Before we do that, let me just double check the comments if everyone is able to get started, if we are all on the same page. Hello, Gerald. Joshua, hello. Vladimir from Serbia, hello. How do you register for the giveaway again? So, Joshua, what you have to do is, where is my presentation? Go to the assets.notjust.dev/giveaway. And there you can enter the giveaway by leaving your email, and we're going to choose one random person from everyone who joined. Slav, hello. Everything is working so far. Perfect. All right. So back in our guide here, our next step, we are done with setting up a Node.js server. So we can scroll down a bit here. You can see all the code that we wrote and that I have explained. And now we get to the products CRUD. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start implementing some logic that will handle the products. Let me do it like this. When you're building a backend, it is a good recommendation to split the concerns into different layers, and this will help ensure that your project is going to scale easily, because when you get started, yes, you can do everything in the same file, you can do everything at the same level, and it's going to be okay. But once the application grows, and if you suspect that your application is going to be huge in the end, then it is a good recommendation to start from the beginning with splitting everything into different concerns. So this concerns starts from the top, and the first step is a router, and the router basically redirects the traffic to the right controllers. So basically, if we're going to /products, the router will say, okay, we're dealing with products, I'm gonna give it to the controller product. If we're going to go to /orders, that's gonna redirect to the orders. Then the controllers will handle all the HTTP logic, and we're gonna get there. I just wanted to introduce the router, and let's now go ahead and see how we can define this router with Express. So for that, we're going to go into the source, and let's create a folder for our router. So router, here we have it. In the router, we're gonna specify different files for different routes of our application. So because we started with the products CRUD, let's go ahead and define the product router.js. Okay, so we're gonna start by importing Express from Express. And we're going to create a router using express.router. Come on. Yeah, just like that. Now, in the end, what we're going to do is we're going to export the router. So let's do it right now, not to forget about this. And what is left to do is to define the routes for our products inside this router. So it's going to be similar to how we indicated a route here directly on our application, basically app.get, and here we indicate the path and a callback function. Only the difference here is that we're going to use the router. So router.get, well, when we try to access the root path of this router, and we're going to indicate by /, What we're gonna do is we are going to implement the callback function that will receive a request and response. And yeah, like we're gonna do response.send get all products. You might expect that, well, Vadim, when we will try to query all the products, don't we want to query not the root URL, but maybe /products? Well, that's exactly what we're gonna do. However, this product is going to be part of the whole router. So our whole router will start with products. And now we need to specify everything that is after that, like products.all or products.top10. Maybe you have a specific route. So we will delete everything that is before and leave only the parts after the main like products route. Perfect. Now we're going to... I haven't introduced you the requirements. So if I scroll down a bit, the requirements for this REST API, I define them here. So for the products, we would like to get a list of products because we want to display them, all the products in the application. And then when we will click on one product in our application, we will want to query one specific product by sending the product ID. So regarding the products, list of products, we have this URL here. And regarding that, getting one specific product, we need to implement another get method that will contain some data in the URL. And that data is going to be a dynamic part of the URL that will represent the product ID. So if there will be something after the product slash and some numbers or some letters, that's going to be parsed as the product ID. And inside our request, we're going to have access to this product ID let me do rest.send and here get product with ID. And here I can do request.params.product ID. So this product ID is going to be parsed from the URL. I'm going to show you in a moment everything how it's connected. But yeah, like for now, we define two main routes for our products that we will need to get all the products and to get one product by the ID. What's left for us to do is to connect this product router to our main application inside the index.js. So this is our application. To do that, we will first have to import the product router. Product router. Actually, in the guide, I called it routes. So I'm going to switch to routes in order to keep consistent with the guide. So product routes equal to require router, and from there product routes. Now what we have to do in order to add this router to our application is to use the app.use. And we're going to say that for all the routes that starts with products, we want to use the product route. And now we do not need the hello world, but maybe we can leave it just to have it there. So with this being added to our project, let's go ahead in our browser to the localhost. And now if I refresh, I still should see the hello world because this is the main page. But if I do /products, that should say get all products. And now if I'm going to do /product/123, that should say get product with ID 123. I know that you cannot really see this product ID here because it's too small, but yeah, it's just localhost with the port 3000/product/123. Now how everything was connected is our app will redirect all the requests that are starting with /products to the product routes. And now the product routes is our router that will handle. Like basically, if there is something after products, then that something is going to be handled as a product ID and it will automatically be parsed. And if there is nothing there, then it's going to be handled by our get all products callback here. Okay, so yeah, for now we are good with a router. The next step will be to actually integrate with our database and return some products from the database. If we go to our guide for the database, here we have it. As I said, we're going to use MongoDB for the database, which is a NoSQL database, and it's really easy to work with it. It's really flexible. We do not need to have a strict schema for our data. And yeah, that's going to help us a lot in today's tutorial. We can run MongoDB locally, but in order to avoid all of the struggles on installing and setting up MongoDB locally, what I decided to do is to go with the MongoDB Atlas. Basically, you can launch a MongoDB instance on their website. Just follow their mongodb.com. And here, let's go to create an account. It's free. I'm going to sign in here. On. And they offer free database clusters for specifically development and for learning and playing around with MongoDB. All right, so in our Atlas here, in my case, I have some projects. Maybe you do not have any project. And what we have to do is we will start by creating a new project. Let's go ahead and give it a name. So Nike up. I'm gonna do next. For the members and set permissions, I'm okay with only myself here, and let's press create project. Okay, the project has been created, and the next step is to actually create a database. So let's go ahead and press on this button, build a database. And that will ask us to select what type of database. So here in the last option, we have a free database. Make sure to select this one, unless you don't want to, be charged. It's gonna be enough for the purposes of this tutorial. And we can leave everything as it is and just press create. In the next step, what we have to do is we have to create a user here. So I'm going to go ahead and write Vadim, and I'm going to auto-generate a password. And make sure to copy this password and save it somewhere safe. But save it now because we will need it in a few moments. So you will need this password in order to connect to our database. We will also be able to delete and create a new user or reset the password, but it's going to be easier if you just copy this user password, and let's press create user. So everything was created. Perfect. And in the second step here, they ask us, where would you like us to connect from? And yeah, what we have to do is here we have to whitelist our IP. So I'm going to press on add my current IP address. And that will automatically add my IP address and whitelist it in order for us to be able to connect from our local environment to our MongoDB database. So let's click finish and close and go to database. Okay, we have it. Perfect. We can open it here. And our collections, which are similar to database tables, will be displayed here under the collections. So do we have to add data now? Let me see how I prepared everything. Yes. In order for us to start with some data and see some data whenever we query it, I have prepared in the asset bundle. If you go to the asset bundle, give me just 1 second. In the asset bundle here, go ahead and open the code directory, then data. Then here I have prepared a file called products.json, not products.js, because that was for the first video. It's product.json. So what we have to do is just simply open it in any editor. I'm gonna open it in Visual Studio Code. Why did you open in a new window? I don't know. Open. And this contains data about our products in a format that is going to be added to the MongoDB. So let's copy everything from here, go back to our collection tab inside our cluster. I'm gonna show you once again how you can get here. So from the MongoDB Atlas, go to the database. Here you should see select the project if it's not selected already from this drop down, and you should see the cluster. Go ahead and click on the cluster. Inside the collections, what we have to do is we have to press on the add my own data. So for the database name, let's go with a test, and for the collection name, I'm gonna call them products. Okay, after inputting test and products here, let's go ahead and click create. That will create our collection. And what we should do is now we can go ahead and press on the insert document here. That allows us to insert documents. This is a visual form of inserting the document. So let's switch to the JSON form by pressing on this switch here in the view as JSON with curly brackets. And let's delete everything from here, paste the code that we copied from the products.json from the asset bundle. And once that is done, we can press on the insert, wait a couple of seconds, and then our database will have 16 products there. So we already can see them. The MongoDB automatically generated unique IDs for all of our objects. And yeah, like we can see that, yeah, like we have images, we have sizes, descriptions, and so on. Everything that our application will need. Perfect. Oh, why did I open Spotify? Did you use Mongoose? No, I haven't used Mongoose. I interacted with MongoDB like directly, just to keep things easier. Are you using any paid services? What do you mean by that? In this build? No. Everything is open source, and the only service that we are using is MongoDB, which they have a free tier. And yeah, they are not sponsoring me for doing this. It's just my preference for hosting easy MongoDB tables specifically for development. All right, so now I hope that you have managed to follow along till now. Is anyone following along live? And if yes, can you please let me know if you managed to import the data and if you have everything working so we can move on. Hello Pranav, how are you doing? Why not SQL? I don't know, it's my personal preference to work with MongoDB whenever working in Node.js. I know Postgres SQL is gaining a lot of traction lately, so that's also a very good solution. Don't have anything against. At the end of the day, like choosing between a NoSQL and SQL database. It depends on the projects that you're building and seeing what works best for that specific project. But both are really powerful database systems. Rogelio, thank you. Can you make this up in AWS Amplify? We will do a lot of our applications in AWS Amplify, and we have a lot of application in AWS Amplify. I like the situation when I'm doing something in AWS Amplify and everyone is like, hey, can you do something with Node.js? I'm doing something with Node.js and everyone, hey, can you do it with AWS Amplify? So I guess there is not gonna be a moment when everyone is satisfied. That's for sure. Nike Mern project, please. Exactly, that's what we have here. All right, guys. All right. So let's move on. Let's move on with our API. And yes, like what do we have to do here? Well, as I was talking about separating concerns between layers, we started with the router layer, which is basically the first layer that a request gets to. And then we will have other layers that will handle the data, will manage everything. But the last layer in all our stack is going to be the database layer. And this layer is going to be responsible only for interacting with our database, reading and writing to the database, and that's it. So let's go ahead and start building this database layer. And for that, we're going to start by defining a folder in our source called database. And I'm going to start with a file here, db.js, that is going to be responsible only for making the connection to the database. So yeah, to connect to the database from our Node.js server, we will also need to install a dependency. So I'm going to stop the server here. And what we have to do is, let's go ahead and install MongoDB version 5.1. So yeah, MongoDB is going to be the package that will allow us to connect from Node.js to MongoDB. Got a problem with the product data. It says it has errors. Make sure when you serve a document to delete everything that was already here, because if you add it afterwards, then you're gonna have this error. So make sure it was the wrong file. Yeah, make sure to open the products.json not to have issues with that. Can you do this in Supabase? All right, guys, all right. We can do everything. Only the concern is time. So if you have some spare time that you can share with me, I'd be happy to take it and do even more tutorials in any tools and technologies that you want. I always love learning new stuff as well, so this is gonna be a win-win situation for everyone. So yeah, that's a good idea. We need to open a bank donation of time. Send me time, guys. Okay. So yeah, we installed MongoDB. Let's go ahead and inside source database db.js, let's go ahead and import Mongo client from Mongo, not from, I'm always doing from, using require MongoDB. Here we have it. The next step is we need the URL in order to connect to our MongoDB. So where do we get this URL? We can get it from our mongodb.com, from the atlas. So let's go here and let's go to the overview. Not even overview, right? I think we need to go to the database. Yes, just press on the database in the left panel. And here near the cluster 0, you should see the connect button. If we press on this connect, it will tell us basically how to connect, and we can choose that we want to connect from our application. Let's press on this second option, connect from our application. And here is our URL. Just copy the URL that it generated for you. Go ahead and paste it here. And one last step is we need to set the password. And here is where you need the password that I told you to save in some notes. I'm going to go ahead and grab it for myself. Here we have it. Yeah, I know you can see it, but I'm going to delete it soon. So if for some reason you lost the password, it's not a big issue, because you can go to the database access under security. You might want to delete one of the users that you don't know the password for, and you can create a new one by going here, choosing the password, setting the name for and entering a new password. So by doing that, also you have to add a role for read and write to any database. And lastly, create add user here, and you can connect with the newly created credentials. I'm going to delete it now, and I'm going to return to our project. Okay, so we have a URL. The last step is to connect to our MongoDB and get the client by using Mongo client. Actually, we need to initialize this as a class, new Mongo client, and here we need to send the URI. Okay, that will give us a client that will allow us to communicate with our MongoDB database. So let's go ahead and get that database that we want to interact with. And we're going to do that by calling client.db. And here we're going to put test, because the database name that we created was test. If we go to the database here, cluster 0, and if we go to the collections, you see here that we called it test. If you called it differently, take it from here, the name of a database. And the products is our collection. So the next step is going to be to get our products collection by using the database.collection, and here the name of a collection that, again, you take it from here. Test.products, test products. All right, so now that we have access to the products collection, let's go ahead and export it from here, because we don't want to do any more logic here. The purpose of a db.js was simply to connect to our database, and in order to split the code nicely, in order to have everything in separate files and easier to manage afterwards, we're going to create a new file in our database that is going to be responsible for interacting with a products collection, basically create, read, update, and so on. So let's go ahead and in the database do products.js. And what we need here is, first we need this products collection that we define here. Let's go ahead and import the database from this directory database, and this database will have a products collection. And here we will define two functions. One function for getting all products, that is going to be an async function, and another one for getting one product. this is also going to be a sync. And here we will also receive one parameter ID because we need to know the ID of a product that we want to query. In the end, what we have to do is we have to export these two functions using module.export, and here we're going to export them inside the object as getAllProduct and getProduct. We need to export these two because we will need to call them. But yeah, before we will call them, what we're going to do is let's implement the logic of these calls. So to get all products, what we have to do is we will use the database that we imported here. So const product equal. We're going to call the db.products. That's our products collection. And we're going to use the operation find to basically return all our items here. If we don't specify any parameters, find will return basically all the items. And what we have to do with it after we receive them, we need to transform them to an array. So that's going to be .toArray. So lastly, let's go ahead and return these products from the function to be able to use them down the road in the router. Regarding the getProduct, we're going to also use the db.products collection. But in this case, we're not going to call find, but find one. And by specifying find one, DynamoDB will use this filter that we send here and will return the first item that matched the condition. And how do we want to find? Basically, we can search by the name, we can search by the size, by a lot of things, but what we are interested in is searching by ID. All right, the thing is that if we look at our collection products, our entries, they do not have an ID, they have an underscore ID. And as you can see, this is not a proper string. This is of a type object ID. And in short, this is only to optimize how DynamoDB queries and links everything together. But what we have to know is just simply the ID is not a string, it's an actual object ID. So now with that being said, we need to find one by filtering based on the underscore ID. And what we have to filter on, basically not this ID here, but based on the object ID that we can create with new object ID. This object ID was automatically imported from MongoDB, and we can pass there the parameter ID to transform from a string to an object ID. Lastly, we can return the product, and with our products database layer, we are mostly done. Because we have only one line here, we can simplify this by returning right away without saving them to a variable. So that's going to be simplified to return. And you can even remove a wait, but that's a bit more advanced. Okay, so we have our database layer, and every time we call getAllProducts, this will fetch the products from the database. And what we have to do next is to somehow connect our router that we have defined in the beginning and the database layer. In a real world scenario, in between these two layers, the router, which is the closest to the, which is the first layer that the request is passed to, and the database layer, which is basically the last layer, in between them, there are more layers. Yes, a lot of layers in order to build scalable backends. So basically, we have a router, then the second one is a controller that is responsible for handling HTTP logic, like adding the headers, adding status codes, and so on. Then the controller uses the service layer that is responsible for the business logic, basically doing all the calculation, doing all the checks if everything is in line with the business rules of the application. And lastly, the service layer is using the database layer. I hope that didn't confuse you and just gave you an idea of how everything works and why we have to split everything into multiple layers. And that's just because to make our project scalable, so that at any time we can basically change some of these parts without impacting all the code of our application. For example, if we want to change the database from a MongoDB to a PostgreSQL, what we have to do is simply update the last layer, the database layer, without changing anything before. Anyways, for this specific tutorial, we're gonna skip the controller and the service layer just to make everything more simple, because we have quite a simple project. So what we're gonna do is from the router straight away to the database, we are going to integrate them together, skipping the controller and the service layer. And with that being said, let's go ahead and open the router and the product routes. And here, for getting all the products, what we have to do is, yes, we have to get them to import something. From our database layer, database and products. We will need both get all products and get product function. And yeah, here inside our first method, when we want to get all the products, basically we're gonna get them by calling get all products, and that's it. We can go ahead and do console log products, and we're gonna see what we have there. So I'm gonna go make sure to run our server with npm run dev, and let's go ahead and open localhost /products, simply /products without / anything else afterwards. That should do something. Loading. Hopefully it didn't throw any errors. So it should go here, get all products. And we don't see any errors, but in the console log, we already see data. That means that everything was connected correctly and our connection to MongoDB was done successfully. We have access to it and we get all the results back. The last step here in the router layer, which actually should be the controller layer. I don't want to get to confuse you too much. But yeah, in this router layer, what we're gonna do is for the send, instead of sending a string, we're going to respond with JSON object, and we're gonna say that the status was okay, and the data is going to be products. So if I do that and go back now to our browser and refresh, we see a list of JSON. In your case, that should be a bit different because I have a tool to beautify the JSON. It might look for you like this. It's a bunch of data, but this is the data of our products. So we see that there are some images, there are some sizes here, description, and so on. And if I put in the parse mode, you might not have this functionality. This is an extension. We see that the status is okay, and we see in the data we have 16 items, and all of these items contain ID, image, name, and so on. Basically, the data that is coming from MongoDB. And we can see that it's actually coming from MongoDB if we No, let me actually implement the second one. And the second one is getting one product. So here we're gonna do the same, product equal await, and we're gonna use the get product method from our database layer by sending the ID. So what's the ID? The ID is this request.params.product_id. And yeah, we need to make this function async. Make sure to do that. And as a response, let's delete this response and send status. Okay, and data product. Now, if I'm going to copy the ID of one of these items and add it after the slash here, so /product/this ID, then what we should see is the data of one single product. So basically, yeah, it's the same ID. If I do search, this is the one. If you're gonna send something different to this as an ID, that will crash your server, just because it will try to parse this ID it will try to parse this string that has less character than necessary. It will try to parse it inside the products.js here in the database to an object ID. And doing that is going to throw an error because the object ID has a very specific structure, so it's not gonna work like this. What we can do is we can add some error handling in order for this not to happen. So we can do a try catch inside our router. So we're gonna try to get the product here. And if we get an error, what we're gonna do is we're gonna respond with what? With status failed. And we can also send an error back with the error itself. Additionally, you can add HTTP status codes, because without adding anything, the default status code will be 200, which basically means that everything went okay. The thing is that it didn't went okay. So what we can do is we can, before sending the data, we can set the status to a status code. So it can be 400 or 401. I think 401 should be for bad request, if I'm not mistaken. Now, if I'm going to, the server should also be failed. So you might have to restart it. And now if I'm gonna do it like this one more time, we see that it's failed. There is an error without any actual error. I don't know why. Error dot message. Error dot message says argument passed in must be a string of 12 bytes or a string of 20. Okay. And now everything works. Another problem is if we pass an ID that has a correct form, but we do not have an item with that ID. So I will delete one character and will add one random character. And if I do that, we see that it simply, what? Did I land on one correct? No, let me edit something inside here. Okay, we see that the data is null, which means that the ID was correct, but we didn't find any products. And that is a very common error. Basically, this is a not found error. In that situation, we have to handle it on this level. So after getting the product from the database layer, we can check if product is null. That means that we didn't find that, that product. So what we should do is we can send a response like this with a status code of 404, which stands for not found. Status failed, error message. Let's do product not found. And also make sure to do return in order to stop the execution here and not send the status OK. Okay, with that being said, now if I'm gonna use an ID that is not in our database, what we should see is, we should see status failed, the status code should be 404, and the error should be not found, if everything is working correctly. Come on. Yes, product not found. If I'm gonna open the DevTools and check in the network, I'm gonna do it one more time. We see that the status code of this request was 404, which means not found. Amazing. But everything with a correct code should still be working as it was working before. Yeah, we see it here. All right, so with that being said, we are done with the product CRUD operations. So what we have done so far is we have, starting from the lowest layer in the database, we have connected to our MongoDB database inside db.js, and we have created a reference to our products collection. Using this products collection inside database products, we have implemented two functions that will help us get the products in the getWorldProducts function, and also get a product by ID by calling specific DynamoDB functions like find and find1. Then this function, we are calling them directly in our router. So whenever we are doing a request to products, then we are using the getWorldProducts and we send them there. I can delete this console log. And whenever we do a request to product/NID, we are using that ID to get the product based on it. And we're doing also some error handling to make sure that we handle situations where the product is not found or the ID is not the correct form in a correct way. So that's everything regarding the products that we will implement. In the next step, we're going to implement the orders, CRUD operations, and for that, we're going to implement the creating an order and also getting an order by ID. Someone is asking if we have services, product service and orders service, and we need to get orders with products. Does it mean that we need to get data and merge from both services or make one function in one service? Usually in a REST API, you do not merge this data in most of the cases. Usually you query all the orders and your orders will contain order IDs. And then from your client side, you will go ahead and for every order, you're going to query the products. So in this way, you have everything separated. That's why actually I love GraphQL more than the REST API, because you can easier create a relationship between data. Hi, Imran. How are you? I'm doing good. If we want to use Firebase, can you use it? Yes, you have my permission. You can use Firebase. Will it work on a mobile app? Yes, it is. Check out Firebase React Native package for that. I love the key software development paradigm you are using. That's a concept that we should all follow always, not only in software development. And KISS stands for keep it simple, stupid. Basically, don't overcomplicate things unless it is necessary. And I know a lot of developers suffer from this problem. Like, hey, we need that, we need that, we need all the layers, service layer, database layer, controller layer, when you are building like a to-do list application. Like, come on. If you know that the project is not gonna grow in size, keep it simple, baby. We can always improve, we can always update, we can always optimize. And it's sad that so many projects and side applications and ideas are killed by premature optimization. Like that kills so many products. Like, and specifically, software developers have this problem because we always want to optimize things. We always want to learn new things. We heard about a new technology and we think that without that we cannot launch a product. No, you can. You actually can. And a lot of people are launching products that have less knowledge than you have. So go ahead and build something great with the skills and with the tools that you already know. And slowly you're gonna add more things to it. Slowly you're gonna learn new stuff and implement it. But don't let that stop you from actually getting something out there. A little bit of motivational speak. You're welcome. Will you hand error status as a message centrally later, or will it be in line for every API service try catch? For this small project, I will not handle them centrally, and actually, like, there is not a lot of error handling here. Like, we have basically 4 endpoints to get product by ID, creating order, and getting order by ID. So we're gonna be okay with handling them in line. Is it possible to install MongoDB in server? What do you mean by that? Is it possible to run a MongoDB server? Yes, you don't have to use the mongodb.com atlas in order to use MongoDB. MongoDB is open source and you can run it on your own server, you can run on your own PC, that will work totally fine. Yeah, and you simply connect the same way as we are connecting now. Are we done? No, we are not done, guys. Stay here. We have still a lot of things to do. So let me quickly revisit. And for everyone that is just joining this video, what we are doing now is we are building a backend for an e-commerce application. And we're going to do this based on the Nike application that we started in the previous episodes of this series. So for the backend, we are building a REST API using Node.js and Express. And for the database, we are using MongoDB. So at the moment, we are almost done with building our backend. We have implemented the necessary operations for our products, like getting all the products, getting a product by ID. And what is left is to implement necessary operations for the orders. After that is done, we're gonna switch to querying this API inside our React Native application. So that's also in today's video. Stay tuned till the end. And we're gonna do that using the Redux Toolkit Query. I hope you will enjoy all of this build, and if you do, actually, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I see from the analytics that more than 90% of you are watching and you are not subscribed. Why? It's so simple. Just do a post request on the subscribe button right now, guys. Okay. So, as I said, we are ready to move to the next step and implement our orders. Yeah, like the all the CRUD operations, not all the CRUD operations, to be fair, we're not implementing all of them. We are only implementing what we need for the application. And in our application, we need to first create an order, and then we're gonna need to track an order. So for that, we're gonna need to query one order by some kind of an identifier. So let's do just that. Let's drink some coffee. Just a small reminder, everything that we are doing is in the step-by-step guide that you can access in the link in the description below. So we are done here with our product routes and so on. We are ready to start working on the orders. So where do we start from? We're gonna start from the router. So inside our router, let's go ahead and create our routes for the orders model. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a new file, order route.js, and it's gonna be similar to the product route. Try to pause the video if you're watching it afterwards and try to do it yourself. Give yourself a challenge and try to at least implement the get order by ID yourself. And after you have done that, come back and let's do it together. That's going to be a great exercise for you to make sure that you can use the knowledge and the concepts that we already wrote, adjust them to a different use case, and implement it yourself. That's basically everything about coding. Like, you don't have to remember, you just have to know where to look, take some pieces and adjust them based on your needs, and understand what we are doing, not simply copying and pasting them. So after we are done with that, let's go ahead and define our router for the orders. We're gonna need Express for that. And let's define the router using express.router. In the end of this file, we're gonna have to export our router. So let's do that, not to forget to do it later. And now we need to define the endpoints for our orders. So what will we need? We will need a get operator to get the order. So the getting the order, we're gonna do it based on the difference between a product is that for a product we specify like get product by ID. For the orders, what I plan to do is instead of getting the order by ID, I want to get the order based on one reference, like a small string that we can send to the user on email or an SMS that he can use as a tracking code. So that reference is not going to be ID because I don't want to expose IDs to the end users. So for that reason, the get method will work based on a reference. And this reference I'm going to show you how we will generate in a moment. So request, response. If you have done it with ID yourself, perfectly fine. That's also possible. We can also implement the get operation based on the ID and a separate route for getting it by a reference. So it's going to be orders/ref/reference. That's also fine. I'm going to go back to our reference here. Let's start by simply saying response.send, and here getting order with reference, and let's do request.params.reference. Okay, that is our getting one order. The next endpoint that we will need is for creating one order. So create order endpoint. We're gonna use the router, but in this situation, we're not gonna use the .get because creating an order is a post operation. And we are going to post directly on the root of our router here, basically on the /orders. And let's do request response like this. And here, yeah, creating an order. So the difference between a post and a get is technically is the way it's handled, but logically is the purpose. A get operation is intended to request information from the server. Basically, give me all the orders, give me all the products. And in a REST API, a get operation should never update or change any data. It should only read and get it back. On the other hand, whenever we have to update something, specifically when we want to create new items, we are using a post operation. Post operation, besides the basically URL and headers, it will also include a body. And the body is all the data that we want to save in the database. So that's why whenever we are getting stuff, we use the router.get. For creating items, we are using router.post. Whenever we are, let me go to the index, because we need to add our orders routes to our application. So for that, let's import it. Order routes require router order routes. And let's do app.use orders order routes. Now, if we go to our local host, instead of /products, let's try to do /orders. We will not see anything because there is no get endpoint for /orders. And you might think, why? Because we added in the route the / here. Yes, we have added it here, but this is a post operation. And whenever we are accessing the URL from a browser, that basically is sending a get operation. So from this browser, by accessing it as a URL, we cannot send post operations. That should happen like when you submit a form or in a different way that I'm going to show you in a moment. As we can see, if I open the network tab, and if I do refresh the orders, network, where is it? Come on. If I look at the orders, we see that the headers here request method is get. And we didn't implement the get operation. But if I do orders, then /abc, which will act as a reference, then we see getting order with reference abc. This is our first method here that has the /reference. I see a good question. What does the $sign mean here? So the $sign here inside this special string, because as you can see, this is not a normal string. A normal string is using double quotes or single quotes like this. However, if we're using the backticks that are under the escape button, this is called a template string. And what it allows us to do is allows us to combine strings with JavaScript variables. So if with a normal string, we will do hello, my name is plus name plus and I am plus age plus years old. If with a normal string we can concatenate variables with strings like this. With template string it's much easier by saying hello, my name is, and here to use a JavaScript variable we use the syntax $, curly brackets, and here we can use name and I am, again a variable, age, years old. So that's everything you need to know about the $, and the template string with the backticks. It's much more readable than the one above. Do you agree? It's less code and it's way easier to build it, especially when you have a lot of variables inside the string. That was a little bit off topic, but I hope you learned something new today if you didn't know about it. Okay. Where are we at? Yes, we are finished with the order routes, with a basic structure for our routes. Let's move on to the database layer, and let's open source database db.js, because we need a new collection for our orders, and we're gonna get it using database.collection, and here orders. We will export it from our database, and now inside our orders database file that we need to create now, let's create in database orders.js. We can import the database using require. And here we're going to have access to database.orders collection. You might think that we will not have access to it because we haven't created in a similar way to how we created our products collection, but MongoDB will be smart enough to create it automatically if there is no collection with that name. So don't worry about that. It will automatically create one with this name that we specified here if there is no collection with that name. Okay, so in the orders. Thank you very much. No, thank you. What? Yes. Thank you. Water from Alex. Thank you, Alex. Stay hydrated, guys. All right. So inside our database orders, we're going to have to implement two functions. One of them is going to be called getOrder, and this order will receive the reference and it will do something. The second function that we need here is going to be createOrder. That looks like a line from a dictator. createOrder. And we're gonna receive order details here, and we're gonna use the MongoDB collection to save it there. Lastly, let's go ahead and do module.exports, and we're going to export these two functions, getOrder and createOrder. Okay, for the getOrder, we are going to use the MongoDB operation that we already saw. And here I'm talking about the find one operation. So getOrder will simply return await database.orders. We're gonna use find one, and here we want to find based on not an ID but a reference. And here we don't need to parse it to object ID because reference is a string. So we simply search by a reference that we have on all our orders. And I can remove the second part because the key and the value is the same. Okay, this one was simple. The second one here for creating an order. So let's go ahead and get the results by calling await database.orders. And here we have a couple of methods to add items in our collection. The one that we are interested in is the insert one. There is insert many as well. So here, if we pass one JavaScript object, a simple JavaScript object, it will go ahead and insert it there. And because MongoDB is a non-structured database, it doesn't have a schema, basically we can save any kind of JavaScript objects there, even though they can be different. So that's the simplicity of it. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we keep some kind of rule there and a structure in order to easier query and work with our data. Now what I want to return back here is I want to return all the data about the order. But the thing is that when we insert the order, MongoDB will automatically generate the ID for this item, and it will return it through the result. So what we can do is we can assign the ID here in order for us to know the ID of a newly generated item, and we're going to take it from results.insertedID. And yeah, that's everything that we need from the database layer here. Okay, let's go ahead and connect this and use these functions, get order and create order, inside our order route. So for the reference here, I think we're gonna start with creating a order. Yeah, with creating an order, and for that we're gonna use the post request. One thing is that let me show you the problem and then show you the solution. So if I do here console log request.body, let's go ahead and try to send a post request to our application and see what body do we receive. To send a post request, as I said, we cannot do it from the browser because that's gonna do only get requests. We can do it with a form, but that's gonna take a lot of time to build. Another way is using HTTP clients like Postman or Insomnia. If you have one, go ahead and use it. But to simplify everything today, I have prepared a command that is simply using curl to send a post request to our API. And let's go ahead and copy this command from our guide. And just to explain what it's happening, it's sending a post request. Here it specifies post. It's using the JSON content type because we provide here a stringified JSON of data to create the order. And we're doing this on the route HTTP localhost 3000/orders. If you're running on a different port, make sure to update it here. And if your endpoint name is different, also make sure to update it here. I'm gonna go ahead and copy it from here. In the terminal, I'm going to open a new terminal here, and I'm going to paste the curl command. It's a lot of things, and if you want to see exactly, I'm not sure if you need to see exactly, but that data is this data in a normal format. is also available in the dummy data here in the new order.json. So if you look here, you're gonna see the structure of the new order data. We're gonna talk about this in a moment. Now what I want to do is I want to send this curl request. So let's press enter and we get back creating an order, because that's what we are sending here, creating a order. But let's move to the first terminal here to see our body. Well, we see that there is no body at the moment, it's undefined, even though we specified the body here. The problem is that to parse the body, we need another, to parse the body from a string into a JSON and to be able to access it easier, what we need to do is we need to install and use another package. And that package is called npm I to install body dash parser. Install it with npm I body parser. And we need to add it to our application in the index.js here. Let's import, not import, come on, Vadim, const body parser equal require body parser. And what we have to do is before our routes here, in a similar way, we need to add the body parser. app.use body parser.json, and we need to call this. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and probably restart our server just to make sure that everything is okay. And let's go ahead and send the same request one more time. This curl request. If I go back here, we see that now our body contains the JSON that we sent there, with items, with total, delivery, customer, and so on. This is the information about one order, and this is the information that we want to save in the database. Perfect, let's do that. So in the order route, source router order route, we know that the request body, this is the data that we need for the order. So let's go ahead and save it in the order data equal request.body. You in a normal scenario, you'd go ahead and validate this data to make sure that the structure and the required fields that you need are there. For the simplicity of this project, we're gonna skip the validation part. And what we're gonna do is basically we're going to do const new order equal. We need to import the database methods. From database orders for create order, and then we're gonna also need the get order. So in this new order, we're going to call the create order, and we're gonna send the order data. Because we have a wait, make sure that your callback function is async. For me, it was automatically switched, but yeah, like you have to manually do it. And yeah, what we have to do is to send back this order to the client, so the client knows that everything worked okay. So we're gonna send the status okay, and for the data we're gonna send the new order. Leaving it like this is perfectly fine, but usually whenever you create something on the server responds with a status code not 200 but 201 to inform that something was created. So we can set the status here to 201 to acknowledge that we created an item in the backend. So with this being said here, let's go ahead and try to send the same request again with curl. We're waiting, and then we should get back the item. Let's see why it's taking so long. Rename to order data. Thank you. Not a huge problem, but I'm gonna do that in a moment. Not sure why it takes so long. Empty reply from server. Interesting. I'm gonna rename to data, but that's not the problem. Wait, create order. Let me check if everything goes okay here. Let's go ahead and check if in the database something new appeared. If I look at the collection, I don't see anything new. Let's try to do it again. I'm gonna restart the server and I'm gonna send this request again. Come on. And we get back the status okay with the data and the items, but look closely that the last property of this item is the last property of this object that represents one new order is the ID. And this is the ID of a newly created order. And now if we go to the MongoDB Atlas and refresh the page, in the collection, we should see a new collection of orders that has one item with this ID that we saw there. So if I search, here is the ID. This item has, this order has an array of items that specifies what products, what size and what quantity of that product was added. That basically everything from the shopping cart. Then it has information about the total, subtotal, and so on. And lastly, information about the customer, like name, email, and address. Because we're not going to use authentication, all the orders will contain information about the customer, like address and so on, to know how to fulfill that order. All right, one last thing is with that reference that I was talking about. What I envision this application to work better because you do not have an account in this application and you simply open the application, order something, and when you come back to the application, we will not be able to know what are your past orders. That's totally fine. I think a lot of applications are working this way without having user accounts, without making users to go through all of the hassle to create an account, set everything up. If it's a simple application like, hey, come here, order, and that's it. In that situation, we need a way to allow users to track their orders. One way to do that was to basically give them the order ID and say like, hey, whenever you need some information about the order ID, give it to us. But as you can see, this order ID is not very human friendly, like it's a very long string. So that's one problem. The second problem is that usually you don't want to expose IDs of your items to the public. They are mostly to be managed internally. So what I'm thinking is for every order to generate a random string, like a short string that you can remember, where you can take notes, and based on that reference, you will be able to track the details and the information about the order. So what we have to do is, in our order route, I want in the order data to add a new property reference that is going to be something like 1, 2, 3. To generate a random string, I'm going to use the next syntax here that you can copy from here in the guide that simply generates a random string of 5 characters, if I'm not mistaken. So with this, yeah, like we're attaching a new property to our worder that is a random string, and based on that, we're gonna be able to search it later. Let's go ahead and send this request again. And in the result, we should see already the ref, which is 3D to py. And as well, you can see that if you look in the MongoDB Atlas here. So if you scroll down to the second item, there is a ref with this item. And the cool thing is that now we can search based on this reference like this in our MongoDB database. And if I apply these filters, I get the worder with that reference. So that's a much more human friendly way of looking based on some kind of IDs. Instead of giving that long ID, we generated a shorter one. And now what we have to do is to implement in this router the function to get the worder, await get worder, and we're gonna get it based on the request dot params dot reference. We need to make this async. And yeah, let's do some error checking here as well. So basically, if we didn't find the worder, what we want to do is we want to send the status code of 404, and the data here will be status failed and error. What error? Worder not found. And after that, we need to stop execution here. And otherwise, if a worder was found, we can send it advent here status okay. And data will be worder. Okay, so let's go ahead and test that. So we have this worder ID here. If I'm gonna access the localhost port 3000 /worders this reference, yes, right away we see the information about that worder. And if I'm gonna give some random strings here, we're gonna see worder not found. Perfect, that's exactly what we wanted. And guys, with this being said, we are done with our backend. We're done with the API methods that we are gonna need to implement in the next step that we're gonna do in this video. And the next step is going to be to integrate this API inside our React Native application and to query it using Redux Toolkit Query. That's gonna be fun. How is it going, guys? Amar, check out the Tesla clone build that we have on this channel. That is a very beginner-friendly build that a lot of people, even with no experience, managed to follow along and to learn and to get started with mobile development with React Native. So go ahead and start from there. How to deploy a MongoDB project for free because Heroku has become paid. Oliver, when it comes to MongoDB, you can use the MongoDB Atlas, and that's what we used in this tutorial to run a database cluster for free. It's not very performant because it's for free, of course, and it's intended mostly for development, but still, like for some test or staging databases, it's perfectly fine. But if you're asking about the API, then I don't really know any solution for hosting the API for free. There might be, there definitely should be, but I really don't. Yeah, basically hosting stuff costs money, servers cost money, and we should be used to that. For the projects that I've been using AWS, running a EC2 instance and hosting my API there. And yeah, like I was paying something a month, but that's expected. That's servers cost money. The video name for beginners, the title of the video is Your First React Native Application. And in that video, we are building a Tesla clone, and it's very beginner friendly. What is my device? I'm working on a Mac Studio device. Kimbawa is saying, taking water boosts productivity. Taking water, yeah. When developers are hydrated, they are less likely to experience fatigue or brain fog, which can improve productivity and ability to concentrate. Hashtag notjust.dev. Let's go. Was that generated by ChatGPT? Tell me. Guillermo, will we see more about Free.js on React Native? Really enjoyed that content. I've been working with React Native for some years and never thought about using Free.js with it. We might, because I really enjoyed it as well. However, it's a very niche and very specific use case, and it really contradicts a bit with my beliefs of learning and doing the minimum necessary in order to get something out there. So I feel that if I'm gonna teach like a lot of Free.js, people will believe that without having some crazy 3D animations in your application does not deserve to be published out there. And yeah, that's what I want to prevent. I want to encourage people to build more application and to launch more application out there. But it's definitely like a very cool tag. Like I saw them the Starlink mobile application is using Free.js, and that would be so interesting to clone it, to build it as well. I loved your blog on Redux. If you're talking about getting started with Redux, that's actually not written by me. That's our new technical copywriter, Saad, which joined our team and is helping us with a lot of content, and is also helping me on the academy side because we have so many students there and we are trying to help everyone. So yeah, Saad is doing a great job on covering a lot of topics as well. So basically, he was the reason why we are doing the Redux series now. So I'm super happy about that. Aditya, don't worry. You can follow this video in the weekend because all our videos stay on the channel and are public. Kimbawa says, I knew you would notice. Yeah, ChatGPT, the power of ChatGPT. It was too perfect. It was too, yeah. All right. Can you explain more about AES build? That's probably a topic for a completely different build, for a completely different video or tutorial. Add Free.js to the shoe which is added to the cart. Actually, in the previous video, we have implemented this Free.js specifically for this application. The only thing is that we didn't include it here because that's an optional step. So I showed you how to build that cool 3D animation for the shoes with 3D stuff. So you can check it. It's on the channel. It's our previous video. Just started? No. Actually, we are at the middle of the video. We finished the first part. So for everyone that is joining right now, I'm gonna quickly do a recap of what we are doing now. So in this tutorial, we are building the Nike application backend using Node.js and MongoDB. And we're going to query this REST API from React Native using Redux Toolkit Query. So this is based on an e-commerce application on the Nike application. So it will be a good tutorial for anyone that are building e-commerce application on the side. And yeah, we have now finished the first part, that including building the REST API using Node.js, Express, and MongoDB. We have 4 main endpoints that we need: get all products, get product by ID, create order, and get order by a reference. And with these 4 endpoints, we are ready to move to the second part of the tutorial, where we will query the API from the React Native using React Native Redux Toolkit Query. So, guys, if you enjoy this tutorial, make sure to smash like, subscribe to the channel, because that will help us a lot in reaching more developers and helping even more people become full stack mobile developers. I appreciate that. Thank you. Why not use Amplify? Because I wanted to focus on something new and something different. A lot of people asked about building Node.js servers, teaching Redux. So here we have it. That's why. But we're not leaving Amplify. Amplify is still a great tool. And I can't wait to get back to it, because I realized that probably for 2 months, I haven't done any tutorials with Amplify. All right. I see you're very active today, guys, in the chat. Keep them coming. Leave your questions there, and once we're done, we can go back and look through some questions that you left. But now, now we are going into the second step of our project. And as I said, in this part, we are going to query our REST API from React Native using Redux Toolkit Query. Please do not spam. Thank you very much. I saw the message. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, so moving on. The application that we're going to use to integrate this in, we have done it in some of our previous streams. You can find the URL here. And this is the application, the user interface. If you haven't followed that, which I highly recommend to do, because that will teach you how to build the Nike application user interface, and it's a lot of fun building it. However, if you haven't done that, or if you need the source code, you can find it here. I attached a link in the guide. And if you switch to the UI branch, this is going to be the branch with a code that we're going to use to start from today. Because later on in the main branch, we're going to have the updated code. So make sure to switch to the UI branch to use the latest code. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a new VS Code window. Where is it? Come on. New window. And I'm going to open the Nike application clone. This is the project, the UI branch. Actually, I'm going... Yeah, so after you pull the repository, go ahead and check out to the UI branch. And if you do git status, you should see on branch UI in order for everyone to start from the same place. Okay, here, this is optional only for me. I'm going to switch to a new branch backend in order to leave that UI for you. And in the backend, go ahead and install all the dependencies of the application. For me, that should be already installed, but for you, go ahead and do npm I to install the dependencies. And once that is done, we can start the development server to run the application. Let's go ahead and run it on iOS. And where is it? Come on. Here we have it. Let's wait until the application has finished building and running on our simulator. Is the documentation available for you? Yes, the step-by-step guide you can access, link in the description below. Thank you, W. Okay, so here we have our application from the first episode. I'm gonna quickly review what we have here. So the main page is a list of products. Whenever we click on one of these products, it displays the product details. And what we can do is we can press add to cart. That will automatically add things to cart, and we can access the cart by pressing on this icon in the header. And we see that we added one item to the cart. We can go back, select one more, add to cart. That will add it again. We can add more items, we can delete items. So yeah, that's what we have managed to build in the first episode of this series. And yeah, everything is done in React Native and using Redux as the global state management. Actually, I highly recommend you checking that tutorial, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with Redux, because in that tutorial we are teaching a lot of Redux. So you need that knowledge in order to follow along with today's tutorial to query our API, because we are going to also use the Redux Toolkit to do that. So, what we're gonna do now, as I said, we're gonna use the Redux Toolkit Query, which is a package that is provided by the Redux Toolkit, and it allows us to interact and fetch data from APIs. The thing is that for a long time, fetching data with Redux was a pain in the ass, just because Redux does not offer a lot of features. It's like bare bones, and developers are free to implement things on their own. And when you do that, everyone was doing things differently. The problem was that you had to write a lot of code yourself. For example, especially for fetching data, because there is a lot of common logic when you fetch data, like handling the loading state, updating the UI when there is an error, when there is loading, caching all the data. So all of these things was done manually until Redux Toolkit introduced the Redux Toolkit Query. With this, it becomes much more easier, and a lot of things are handled by Redux Toolkit, like caching, like managing the loading states, and so on. And for us, what we have to do is to define how we want to interact with our API, and then use some hooks that are also auto-generated by Redux Toolkit to query this data in our component. So, the first step that we have to do is a similar way as we have defined slices for our cart or for our products. we're going to create a new slice specifically for our API. So let's go ahead and create a new file, API slice.js. And here we're going to define our API slice. For that, we need to import the create API function. This function is going to help us create basically the interaction with the API, the Redux Toolkit Query. And we're going to import it from Redux Toolkit, then / query, and we specifically want to import it from query/react because you can import it from query, it will work, but it will not generate hooks. The thing is that we need hooks, so that's why we import it from React. Okay, let's go ahead and create our API slice and export it from this file using the create API here. It needs some parameters, and these parameters we're going to define right now. First of all is the reducer path, and this is similar to other slices that we have defined. For example, for the cart, it has a name. Here we need to specify the reducer path. The reducer path, we're gonna name it API. And the next one is the base query, where we specify the base URL to which we're gonna add like other parameters. For the base URL, we're gonna use a function called fetch base query from the same import. So let's do fetch base query, and we need to specify the actual base URL. Where do we get the data from? Let's go ahead and define this URL in a variable, base URL. And our base URL is going to be, at the moment, the local host. Similar way as we have been querying it from, where is it? From the browser, localhost at port 3000. That's gonna be here. HTTP, localhost, and your port. If you deploy this, your API, then your base URL will be different. And the last thing that we need to specify here are the endpoints. And the endpoints are, here we're gonna specify how we want to query all our endpoints, like getting order, creating the orders, getting a list of products, and so on. The endpoints we're going to create using the builder. And yeah, here we're gonna return an array of endpoints. For now, we do not specify any endpoints. We're gonna come back a bit later to add them. Let's finish like connecting everything together. In order to connect our API slice with the main Redux store, what we have to do is to go to the store index.js and connect it to the reducer here. For that, let's import API slice from the API slice file, and let's do API, which is going to be API slice.reducer. Okay, perfect. The thing is that besides the reducer, whenever we have React Query Toolkit, we also need to specify one middleware. So the middleware, let's get it from the guide here. I'm gonna scroll down in the store index here. So here we get the middleware. And this middleware, yeah, is going to be responsible for caching, polling, invalidating. So basically to making RTK query, React Toolkit query work. Okay. Okay, now our API slice is connected to the main store, but there is one more thing. Like, we need to go back to our API slice and define some endpoints that we're gonna use in our application. So let's start with the two endpoints for our products. The first one is get products. So we're gonna define a function with the name that we want. In this case, I want to call it get products. And using the builder.query, let's define how we want to execute this get products query to get data from the API. What we have to do is we have to specify how we want to build the query itself. So basically what we want to do is we want to query the /products. Products. So what this will do is it will attach the /products to our base URL here and will return our products. Okay, for get products, it's simpler, but for get product, which will be a function to query one specific product, we're gonna also do a query, but in this situation, we need a parameter. So the function right now is going to receive the ID, and the URL will become products / and here the ID. So products / ID. Here I'm gonna use a template string that I was explaining before to add a variable ID here. So now when we will call get product and send one ID there, what we're actually gonna do is we're gonna execute a query on the localhost 3000 /product /ID. Okay. Now our create API, because we imported it from React, will generate hooks for these two endpoints. And the hooks are going to allow us to easier execute the queries in our application. So let's go ahead and export these hooks. Export const. And we're going to export them from API slice. And they will be called use and then the name. So for example, use get products query. This is get product, and the next one is use get products query. So one is product, one is products. Okay, so what we have done here is we exported these two hooks from our slice, and that will allow us, as I said, to query this data easier in our components, in our screens. To do that, let's go ahead and the screens, and we're gonna start with the main homepage screen. That is our product screen here. At the moment, we're taking it from the product state, that is dummy data. What we have to do is, we're not gonna need it here, because we are going to use, let me leave it for a moment, and we're gonna change it a bit later. So as I said, we need to import use products query from store API slice. And using this query, whenever we use it inside our component, it will execute the query to our API and will return us some information back. This information will be data, it will be is loading, and it will be error. These are the most important things that we need to know. So, if you're familiar with Apollo or other querying library or even React Query, you should be familiar with this way of running queries. So basically, everything like loading state, error handling, data, they're managed automatically for us. We don't need to handle this ourselves. And now in our component, we can simply say if is loading, we can show a loading indicator. So we're going to return an activity indicator. If it's error, we can return basically a text saying error fetching products. Otherwise, let's go ahead and start by console logging the data. Console log data. So if nothing happened there, and we already see the data here in yes, return, and here we see data with all the items that we have there. Okay, so that means that now we don't need the products from the dummy data state there, because we can take the products from the query data. So const products equal data. The thing is, we're gonna use data.data because that's the first data is this name and the second data is the way that we called it in our API. And right over that, we have our items queried here. You might think that nothing changed, but actually these are items that are coming from the database. If you're gonna click on one of them, it's gonna say error because the next page is not yet implemented with querying these items, so that's why it's a problem. But yeah, like this information, this data is coming from the database. We see the loading indicator. That's another addition to our application because the useGetProducts at this moment is saying that the data is still loading. So if I refresh, we see loading indicator, and shortly we should see the actual data. Error fetching products. Let's go ahead and also specify the error.message. Will it say something? No. Error doesn't want. Data.error. Let me console log error here to see it in the error type error network request fail status fetch error. Okay, so I can do here error.error. Yes, error fetching products type error network request failed. And I suspect that something happened with our server. So let's go ahead in our server and make sure that it is still running. If I look, I see the node.mon crashed, waiting for file to change. Why it crashed? I don't know. Because maybe someone is trying to access it. Connection timeout. I don't know what happened there, but I'm gonna restart the server. And I'm gonna refresh my React Native application. It's loading and don't tell me that someone is messing with me right now. Are you guys? Tell me. I need to know. Let's see, let's investigate. Something wrong with my internet? I hope no. Okay, let me see what's going on. Come on. Okay, I don't know. I restarted the server and everything is working. So I'm okay. Okay, so we have here our data that is coming from our API, that is coming from our database. And if we're gonna change or add some products to the database, when you refresh the application, that's gonna be reflected in our mobile application. So here we saw how we can query our database using the generated hook for the, getting products. Using this hook, we get back three important things: data that contains the response from the server when it is available. Initially, data is going to be undefined. It contains loading that is true when we are waiting for a response from the server, and false when we received either a response or an error. So this is easy way to handle loading states by displaying some spinners in your application, or handling how your application should look when we are waiting for a response. And we also get the error back that we can handle and see what we should do in the user interface as well. So from our React Native part, it's pretty simple. From the API slice here, it might be a bit more confusing, and for me as well, it's confusing. A lot of things are still boilerplate for me, even though React Toolkit is saying that their goal is to remove the boilerplate that you have to write when using Redux. So still, there are a lot of things that you have to do and you have to remember, like the builder query, another query, the function. Yeah, I understand. If it's confusing, don't worry. It's okay. We can have these examples, and just to understand how everything works from a high level perspective, we can easier replicate this for other scenarios as well. So we have integrated the use get products query in our main page here. The next step is, for the second page, we have to implement the use get product query. So this page is going to be inside our screen's product details screen. But before that, whenever we press on one of these items inside the product screen, we have this pressable. So whenever we press on one of the sneakers here, what we are doing at the moment is we are dispatching an action to change the selected product. Well, we're gonna switch the logic here, because instead of setting it in state as the selected product, I'm gonna comment it out. I'd rather send the ID of that product to the product details page, like this, item dot underscore ID. Use the underscore here because in the database our IDs are with underscore. And now going to our product details screen, we're going to get that ID from the route. So we can get const ID equal route dot params dot ID. and I can console log route here, and we can check by pressing on one of these items. Nothing happens, but if I scroll up a bit until I see some IDs, where is it? The problem is, yeah, like the product is null here, so I can add another check here. If product is null, return null, just not to give me these problems. And now here in the terminal, if I'm gonna press on this, I see that, what? Params. Not route, I want to, to console log ID. So now if I'm going to go here, yeah, this is the ID. Go here, this is the ID. Perfect. Now, knowing this ID, we can use the query to get the information from our API about this product. So we're gonna use the use get product query, not products, but product. Make sure, very important. Now, a similar way, we're gonna get data, loading, and error using the use get product query. But now for this hook, we need to send some data. In the API slice, for the query, we have an ID here. So that basically means that we need to send the ID from our hook in the product details screen. The ID is our ID that we get from the route. Now having this loading error and product, we can go ahead and do here if loading, but not loading, but is loading. Is loading. We want to return the activity indicator to show a spinner. If it's an error, let's go ahead and return a text with error fetching the product, and we can also specify error.error. Otherwise, instead of this if statement, I'm gonna say our product is going to be equal to data.data, and we should also make sure to delete the old way of getting that product. So let's delete it from here. Now, if I'm gonna go and open this one, we see that the data is coming from our API. And you see, initially it's a very short loading indicator, and after that, it displays the data. But yeah, that's how it works. Another cool thing about React Toolkit Query is that it handles caching automatically. And what do I mean by that? To explain what I mean by that, inside our backend in the router for the products, when we are querying the product ID, let me do a console log query product with ID, and here I'm gonna do request params.product ID. Let's open the terminal here and let's press on one of these items, or let's refresh the page first. I'm gonna open the first item and we see query product with this ID. Okay. I'm gonna press on the second one, query product with this ID. Perfect. That's what is expected. And if I'm gonna go back to the first one, I don't see a third request because React Toolkit Query will automatically cache that result. And if we're sending the same request twice, it will not send it to your backend. And that will highly improve the performance of your application. Again, if you look at some data that is not already in the cache, it will reach your server. But if you go to a product page that was already loaded, it will not send the request twice. And that's cool. That's what you would expect from a querying library to have. caching out of a box. Okay, so we saw how, and we implemented the queries for our products, getting the products from the API here and getting one specific product on this page. And to see that it's actually coming from the database, you can go ahead and look at the collections. For products, you can look at probably the second one. Or let's try to find it by name. Nike Reacts. Yes, I found it, and I'm gonna update it to Nike React. And I'm gonna update it. And now if I'm gonna refresh my application and open this page again, we see that the name has updated correctly. And that means that, yeah, like our data is actually coming from the database and it's not coming from our dummy data. Okay, so I hope you are managing to follow along and to understand what we are doing so far. We have finished with integrating the products API endpoints in our mobile application. The next step is going to be to implement our orders API endpoints. And for that, we're going to look how we can send a post request to our API using Redux Toolkit Query to create a new order whenever we press the checkout button. And also then we will implement the querying the data about the order to display it based on the reference. So if you're ready, if you're ready, I am ready, and we can go ahead and start and continue with our API slice. So I'm gonna close ours. Let me go ahead and add a commit here. And do products API integration. And now we're gonna continue with our orders. For that, let's go ahead and open the source store API slice to add new endpoints for our API. And the new endpoint here, let's do orders. The new API for the order, the first one is going to be the create order. It's funny, create order. We're gonna use the builder dot not query, because query is when we want to send a GET request. We want to do here a mutation, and the mutation is for our post. Whenever we want to send a post request or a patch to update some data. So in this, we need to define here how we want to build the query that is going to reach our database. And here, instead of simply specifying the URL, we will specify an object, because whenever we send a mutation, there is a little bit more information that needs to be sent. One of them is, yes, it's the URL, and the URL will be orders. But we also need to specify what method, what HTTP method to use. And we're going to use a post HTTP method. And lastly, we need to send the body, basically the data that we want to send to the server. The body we're going to receive as a parameter from our shopping cart component. So we're going to simply receive it as a parameter and send it as a body there. While we're still here, we can implement the get order by reference method. So let's add one more here, get order. And this one, we're going to use a builder.query because it's a simple query. And for the query, we're going to get the reference and we are going to send the request to orders / and this reference. Like this. Okay, so we have this create order and get order endpoints. That means that the create API function automatically generated hooks for running this mutation and query. So let's go ahead and use these hooks. So one of them will be use create order mutation. And the second one will be use get order query. We're going to start with a mutation. For that, we're going to go in our screens. Where should this happen? Network request failed. Something wrong with my server again. I think I'm connecting too many times to the server, to the MongoDB. And that can be because in our database here, we are connecting multiple times there. We can optimize this to prevent multiple connection by saving the connection in a variable and then checking if that's but yeah, let's for now try to restart it and see if we can prevent that. Okay, that's not very bueno. We're connecting too many times to the same server. Or someone else is also connecting to the same server, which I think is the case, to be honest. Bright is saying, I have learned a lot from you. I appreciate that. I'm happy when I hear this. There are 15 connections currently. For concurring incoming connection to a database. So MongoDB, too many connections. We're gonna investigate together. Let's go. Yeah, the problem is, as I was expecting, the problem is that for every query that we do, we basically create a new MongoDB client, and that's not the preferred way of doing this. So let's try to optimize this and to save our client into a variable and use it if we already connected to it. So we're gonna have a function connect db get db, and that function, what is going to do is it's going to basically do all of this stuff. Initialize the Mongo client, connect to the database, get the products, orders, and lastly it will return products and orders, these two collections. Now, instead of exporting this here because we don't have access to them, we're going to export getDB function. So this will not solve a problem because we still create this connection over and over again. To solve a problem, let's go ahead and define the client on top here. Let client. And we're gonna check if, here we need to remove a const client to use the same client from here. And we need to say if client is null, only then create a new Mongo client. Otherwise, use the same that was already generated. And then do the same thing. The next step is from our orders. Instead of db here, we're going to import getDB, and we're gonna call this getDB here dot orders and so on. The same here and in the products as well. getDB, and getDB. So now the connection is supposed to be reused whenever we are sending multiple requests. So let's go ahead and try again. It might still fail for a bit until it closes the old connections because they are somehow still open. But once it frees up the previous connections, it should be, we should not get into this error again. Let me see if I can somehow close it from here. Cluster, if I look at real time. So for connections here, it is still at 15. MongoDB Atlas release connections. Come on. I need just to get one connection, and after that I think it's gonna work. I could probably delete it and create a new one. If I go terminate. No. Let me try to go ahead and create a new database with shared create. Give me just 1 second. I think that's gonna be much easier. Create cluster. So it's only one cluster per project. Okay. New project. Nike up to create. Let's create a database. Shared. Create. Traffic lights. Vadim, and for a password I'm going to auto generate one and copy it. No, it's okay. Okay. And add my IP to whitelist, finish and close. Go to database, Now I'm gonna choose connect, and I want to connect from the application. Let's copy the connection code from database DB here, from the backend. I'm gonna update the URL, and I'm also gonna paste the password. I think I'm not gonna show you this time the password, even though I don't think you can access it, as it is only my IP is whitelisted. But and let's go ahead and try to launch it again. So here in the code, API is listening. If I refresh products, come on, this time you should work. Products, if I refresh, status okay, yes, but there is no data. Perfect, because the last step is to go ahead and populate the data in the collections. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my own data in the test database with a collection name products. Let's go ahead and create it, and I'm going to insert them from products.json. Let me copy all of them, and from here let's insert a document, and let's insert all of them. Insert. Nice. And now let's refresh the React Native application, and we are back to where we started. But now our database connection is going to be reused. So if we do more queries, that's not going to open new database connections, I hope. Let me actually check that in the real time, I think. Metrics. Current two, yeah, I think one of them is the Atlas and one of them is this one. $13. Again. I think I didn't. I think I didn't improve it. Okay, let's move on until we crash it again, and then I'm gonna see what's the problem there. No, I cannot do that. If I go to the database.js, console log creating a new client, and else console log reusing the old client. Oh, maybe because my application is launching over and over again with NodeMon, and yeah, NodeMon is launching the application over and over again, and that causes my database to connect over and over and over. I think so. So what we have to do is in the package JSON here, instead of a dev script, let's add another one, start, that will simply execute node source index.js, and this will not restart the server so many times. So let's do npm run start. It's still listening, creating a new client, but the second time it's going to reuse the old client, and now everything should be okay. Okay, so back to our React Native application. Back to our React Native application. So what we have implemented so far, just to recap, we are querying the products from the database. We're querying the product details also from the database. Now we can add things to the cart. And when we go to the cart there, by pressing here, why you're not adding to the cart? Come on. Add to cart. Add to cart. You're not adding to the cart. Why? Screens. Shopping cart. Button. Checkout. No. Product details screen. We have add to cart. Add cart item. Product. Yes. The problem is that this product at this moment is not available. We need to declare it a bit more on top here. Now, if I do add to cart, you should be working. And I need to access it safely. Add to cart. Second one, add to cart. It's not adding. Nice. Add to cart item actions. If I go to the store, cart slice, where is the add to cart? Yes, because at the moment our cart is working with IDs, but our data is working with underscore IDs. So we need to make sure to update this to underscore ID, and that's it. Now, if I add one item to the cart and add the second one, it's gonna work properly. Okay. That was expected. Okay, so, oh no, and now again, let's make sure that everywhere we are working with ID, we are actually working with underscore ID. Item product, yes. And now if I'm gonna add more of them, if I change this one, no, cart item dot quantity. Change quantity. Let's see where we look for, we call the change quantity. In the cart list item. And here again, we are working with ID. So we need to make sure it's underscore ID. And for the decrease quantity, it's also underscore ID. And now it's working, yes. So some changes, we might want to check other places where we're working with .id. And that's, yeah, product slice. The product slice, yeah, we don't need it anymore. Okay, so now that we made our cart work again as it was working before, what we want to do is whenever we press on this checkout button, we want to execute the create order mutation. So in the shopping cart, let's go ahead and import use create order mutation from the store API slice. Inside the function shopping cart itself, let's go ahead and use create order mutation, And this hook, instead of giving us back data error and is loading, it's going to give us back, instead of this thing, it will give us a tuple with two values. One of them is the function that we will call to execute the mutation. So we're gonna call it create order. And the second one is the result. So basically the second one is what we expect here, data error and is loading. So we can already say, yeah, we can console log sorry, is loading maybe data. On this page, we have a checkout button. So whenever we press on this checkout button, we want to execute a function. So let's define this function on create order. And for the button on press, we will call this on create order. Create order. Come on, create order. So in one create order, we need to call this API function create order. We're going to send there the some data. So it's going to be an object. If you remember from our dummy data, the new order structure should look something like this. It should have an array of items. It should have subtotal, delivery total, and customer information. So for the items, where is it? Oh my God, it should be here. So for the items, we're going to get them from cart items. Basically, all the items from the cart, we want to add them to the order. Then for the subtotal, delivery, and total, let's go ahead and take them from where? Well, if you scroll down, if you scroll up a bit, in the other component, we see how we are taking the subtotal, delivery fee, and total, also from the Redux store. So let's copy this from here and use them inside our shopping cart as well, because we need them for the subtotal here, for the delivery fee here, and for the total. And lastly, for customer information, we don't have data at the moment, but we can put some dummy data here. Hard code, for example, the name is Vadim, address, my home, and maybe email if we want to ask the user for email so that he can send, we can send him some emails with the order information. Okay, just by doing that, let's go ahead and try to press on the checkout. I will press on it. Nothing happens. We can look in the console of our application and we see undefined false, and lastly undefined true. That undefined true is for the loading. And after that, the loading finishes. Which means that now if I'm gonna check our collections, I expect to see one order in our database. In your case, and yeah, like if I press one more time and refresh it, I should see another order there. I should see two in total. Yes, there are two. It has a subtotal, which is exactly what I see in the application. If I change it a bit, for example, like this, and do a checkout, that should be reflected in the information that we save in the database. For the last one, total 507, and the reference is V1M. Yeah, I'm not gonna say it. Whew. So what that means that we have correctly created the order, the last step is to show some user feedback on the screen. For example, whenever we are submitting the order and we have this is loading, maybe we want to change to the checkout of the name of the button checkout to add an activity indicator here after checkout. So what we can do here is put it from a new line and conditionally say if it's loading. Let's add an activity indicator from React Native like this. And if I press checkout now, I see the activity indicator very fast, and because our API call is so fast, it right away disappears. That's one way to show like that something is happening, like it's loading. Another thing is that I want to tell the user that, hey, everything worked correctly, and here is your reference number. So for that, I'm going to get the result out of this create order using a wait. And let's check if result.data.status is equal to OK. And this can also be null, so I'm going to do it like this. So if everything worked correctly, what I want to do is I want to use a simple alert to say order has been submitted and your order reference ID your order is, and here we're gonna put results.data and another time data, because that's how we send it from the backend, and then ref. Yes. And now if I'm gonna press on the checkout, possible and handle rejection. Why is that? Let's add something to the cart. Checkout. Can find variable results because it's a result. So checkout, order has been submitted successfully. Your order reference is in this number. Awesome. So we tell the user that everything was worked correctly. We show him that his reference ID, reference number, with which he will be able to track it in the next step. We're gonna do that. The last step is that I really want to delete all the items from the shopping cart, because after you order them, that's what usually happens in an e-commerce application. So for that, inside the cart slice of our store, I will add a reducer. I will add a reducer at the end here that will say clear shopping cart. This reducer will simply get the current state and will update the items to an empty array. So it will reset it to the initial state. And just by removing the items, it should be items, not item, it automatically will recalculate the subtotal, delivery, and so on. But we still have to call it, and we're gonna do that from the shopping cart JS, from the screen shopping cart, after we confirm that the order has been created. So here we're going to dispatch. First of all, we need access to the dispatch. Equal use dispatch. And we are going to also need access to the cart slice, and here clear. Or no, cart slice itself. So now in the onCreate order, after we got the result, we are sure that the order has been created and everything goes okay. Now we can safely dispatch the cart slice dot actions dot clear, and that will go ahead and clear all the items from the shopping cart. Let's go ahead and test it out. I'm gonna add some items there. I'm gonna go to the cart, and if I press checkout, I see that order has been submitted with this ID, and our shopping cart has been cleared out. So yeah, that's how it's supposed to happen, I guess. All right, so we are creating our orders successfully. The last step is to give them the possibility to track these orders. So what do we have to do for that? Let's go ahead and create a new screen for the tracking the order. So in the screens, actually, I'm gonna go ahead and commit everything. Create order API integration. And yeah, let's go ahead and create a screen for tracking the order. So track order.js. I'm going to initialize an empty component with the React snippets extension. And this, yeah, like is a simple blank component. Now we need to put it in our navigation. So let's open source navigation. And in our navigation here, we're gonna put it somewhere, basically let's do it after the cart. So stack.screen, the name is going to be track order, and the component is going to be track order screen that should be imported. Make sure to import it from the screens. What's going on there? Yeah, I also need to close this component. Okay, now we have that screen, but there is no way to navigate there. So where will we do that from? We're gonna do that also from the products page. I want to add an icon here in the header left. So for that, the same way as we are doing with header right, let's check where it ends, it's here. We need to specify header left. So this is going to be a function that will render what should be displayed in the left side of a header. For that, I'm gonna go ahead and get this from the guide. It's, yeah, this one. Header left, material community icons. It's a simple icon that when we press on it will redirect to the track order. And we need to also make sure to import material community icons from vector icons here. Now if I press on this track in the top, I go to a page called track order. Nice. So having this page here, if you remember in our API slice, we have implemented the getting order by reference query. Okay, so we need to call this get order by reference using the hook use get order query. So let's go ahead in the screens, track order. And here we're going to use this query. We're gonna get the data is loading, and we're also gonna get the error. Use get order query. This use get order query should receive a reference. So a reference like the one that we can get from the database, or the one that the user will receive. Now this data But where do we get this reference? For that, we need a text input on the screen. So let's go ahead and import a text input from React Native, text input, and render it here. I'm gonna go ahead and import this text input from our guide. Here we have our text input. And also I'm going to import the styles that I have defined here, not to waste time on them. Style sheet. Style sheet should be imported from React Native. And we need to define a state variable for the value of our text input. And that value is going to be called ref and set ref. We're going to store it in a state using the use state hook. On change text, set ref. Set ref. Yeah, like that. So if I go here, now I see your order preference, and for this view I also have to give styles.root. Okay, so now this ref should be used as the input for our query, and in this way, whenever we change the reference here, we're gonna execute the query and we're gonna display down below what is the result. So let's go ahead and display the result here below the text input. First of all, I want to render, if it's loading, I want to render a loading indicator. Activity indicator. So if I write something, I see the activity indicator. Now I also want to handle the situation where the order is not found. So if data.status is not okay, I want to simply render a text saying order not found. So if I write something like this, order not found. Perfect. Otherwise, what we will want to do, basically, if data.status equal to OK, here we are going to render details about the order. For now, I'm going to go ahead and simply render the data.data and make it as a string. So json.stringify. And add some maybe null and 2 here. And let's grab an actual reference from our database like this and paste it here. And right away we get information about that order. If I change something, it will still render the same order because it's going to be cached, but if I change the reference to a different order, for example, this one with CYS13, I think should be lowercase. In that situation, it automatically updates and we see a different order ID. Okay, so that's how we query the order based on the reference. The problem with this solution is that we will rerun this query. We will send basically this query every time for every character that we change here. So that's not very performant, and sometimes you want to add some debounce, meaning that we will send the query only when we stop typing for a couple of milliseconds, for 300 milliseconds, for example. Or another way is to add a search button on the right or somewhere in the UI to execute the query only when we press that button. And in that situation, instead of using a normal query, you will use a lazy query that you're going to be able to call only when user does an event, basically pressing a button. I'm not going to implement the UI for this page because I didn't have time to prepare it, but that's not the point of this tutorial. What I wanted to do is how you can build a REST API with Node.js, Express, MongoDB, and how you can query that API from React Native using the Redux Toolkit Query. And I think that you learned a lot today in this video. That's everything that I have prepared for you. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, because we are going live every single Friday with a new tutorial, with a new project-based build. And yeah, we're learning a lot on this channel. Let's go ahead and see a couple of comments before we start the weekend. Actually, I'm here in Tenerife. I live in Tenerife, and we have the Grand Parade here. So it looks something like this. Let me try to Tenerife. Carnaval. How do you call it? Carnaval. So today is almost the last day where everything is going crazy here. So I cannot wait to go there with everyone. So yeah, we're gonna get dressed. Previous year, I think more than 1 million people were here. So it's a crazy thing. All of these people get dressed. Everyone is having fun. I don't know where Spaniards get so much energy for for partying, because I was going this week to the gym at 6 in the morning, and every time I was going to the gym, I was seeing people dressed up and coming from a party. Like throughout the week, like, come on, guys, where do you get energy from? But yeah, probably everyone with their own priorities. Uber Eats clone. Hey hero, we have done that. It's on the channel. You can check it out. If you simply search Uber Eats notjust.dev, you're gonna see. It's a huge project with 5 days, actually 7 series project. So it's a very, very in-depth project, which I hope you will enjoy. What about adding payment? That's a very good question. I was thinking about as well. I will not promise, but I really want to see that coming next week. So hopefully we will do that. Come on guys, don't spam. That's not nice. I see it. I see your messages. It just takes a bit of time for me to process them. I'm not that smart. And after 3 hours and a half of coding, like it takes some time. So just copy pasting your message will not help at all. Oh guys, so I hope you enjoyed this. Have a great weekend ahead. I'm gonna go have fun at the carnival here in Tenerife, and I'm gonna wait till next week with another great build. Maybe we're gonna do the payments. So stay tuned, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, leave a like if you enjoyed, and bye bye guys.